This week is relatively chill and actually pretty enjoyable, and I want you to enjoy it because the week after this is when all the craziness starts. Welcome back to the Astrology Report. My name is Cam White. This time we were talking about March 11th through March 17th of 2024. Like I said, there's not a lot of action going on this week, which is nice because, again, next week is where all the action lies. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to get the notifications for what next week is going to be like. But let's go ahead and get started. So we're starting the week off with just the moon being in Aries, and it will be conjoining the North Node. But the highlight that we have, and this is really the main highlight for the week, is Venus is ingressing into Pisces. So Monday has not a lot going on. The moon will be conjoining the North Node. So there is this impulsiveness to Monday of wanting to get things done, of wanting to go really, really fast. That theme is going to continue for the next 2 months. We have a lot of planets that are going to be conjoining the North Node along with an eclipse. So like pretty much between now and May is just going really, 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 really fast. With the moon conjoining the North Node, we get a little bit of that beginning. We get a little bit of the momentum. It's like the first little snowball before it turns into a gigantic one down the hill. And so as the moon's conjoining the North Node, there's this impulsiveness. There's this almost irrationality. You could be very angry. Like the moon conjoining the North Node in Aries is like when you're like late to an appointment and you're already driving fast and then someone cuts you off, so you get even more angry and you drive even more fast. Be careful not to go overboard with it. I think it's really easy with the moon conjoining the North Node. Like the North Node is like hyper consumption. Like don't go overboard even though you want to. Try to remain as chill and as cool as possible while still being able to get things done or at least feel like you have the energy to do things. But we have Venus ingressing into Pisces, and why this is so nice is Venus is exalted in Pisces. This is one of her favorite signs to be in. In fact, arguably her favorite sign to be in. Now, what's also interesting about this is Venus is in Pisces, right? Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. So we're going to be having this Jupiter-Venus mutual reception here for the next few weeks. And I think it's going to be really, really good in my opinion. Venus is about pleasure, indulgence, fun, and enjoyment. And when she's in Pisces, it, you know, like I was saying this in my Patreon on the monthly overview, it's very manic pixie girl, like, or manic pixie girl. Is that the right phrase? That's what Venus reminds me of. It's very, or Venus and Pisces reminds me of. It's very, you know, like hippie rave girl that's like about plur and does this little thing, even though I know there's a big controversy of like, is this the good heart or is this the good heart? I personally like this heart. But as Venus goes into Pisces, when we talk about the area of our life that is about pleasure, that is about fun, there's a lot more access to it. And it's not as restraint, or it's not as, you know, there's not as much restraint. There's not as much restriction with it. It's very just free flowing and having a good time. And what I like about this is like, you know, comparing it to Mercury and Pisces, Mercury is trying to like have a lot of clear facts and be a lot more logical and rational, but I can't do that in Pisces because there's all of these, you know, big things versus Venus and Pisces is just kind of like, it almost reminds me of like ignorance is bliss. Like if you ever like see someone who just like doesn't know a lot of things, but they're having the best time in the world. It's like, I heard someone say the other day, it's like ignorance almost protects you in a way. And that's how I almost look at Venus and Pisces. And if you have Venus and Pisces, I'm not calling you ignorant, but there's a level of not being worried or not, you know, focusing on the things that are bad and just being like, I'm just going to have fun to have fun. Venus and Pisces, if Pisces is about, again, like the internal world, the spiritual, and Venus is about fun and pleasure. That's why I always think of like, again, like rave girl, like there's kind of like this, like, yes, the vibes are good. The vibes are like high vibe and like house music. And like, I just want to dance and have fun and not think about anything. That's what it reminds me of. So like any way that you can embody that, you should. And of course it depends on what house Pisces rules for you. That is where you're going to see more beauty. That is where you're going to see more. Like for example, Pisces rules my fourth house. I'm in a fourth house year. I don't remember the last time Venus transited my fourth house and I didn't like buy stuff for my house where it was like, you know, like I got like, you see all this? I need a rug. I hate shopping for rugs. Like I want like a nice traditional Persian one. All the ugly modern ones at IKEA are just, like get it out. Like the gray, I'm over it. But Venus going through your fourth house brings a lot more pleasure, brings a lot more value. Venus is like goods and luxuries. So Venus, goods, luxuries, fun, love, romance. It's exalted. It's doing well. Enjoy it. That comes with a caveat though, as Venus is now co-present with Saturn and Venus will conjoin Saturn next week. So there is a little bit of a reality to it. It's kind of like, for example, if Venus is, for example, going through my fourth house, I'm not just going to go into credit card debt to get the things that I want, which would be so easy to just swipe the card and think about the payment later. It's like, how can I be resourceful? How can I have some restrictions on it? Can I ball on a budget, essentially, is what I think about Venus conjoining Saturn. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's for next week, and we'll talk about that later. So as we go into Tuesday, the moon, while it's at the very end of Aries, is going to be sextiling Mars, and then it's going to ingress into Taurus, square Pluto, and then sextile Venus. Tuesday's really interesting, and I said this last week about the moon being in Taurus and making that square to Pluto is like you're trying to enjoy your charcuterie board, but or you're trying to enjoy your charcuterie board, but you've now, had your limit of meat intake for the month according to the WHO and shit like that. As the moon sextiling Mars while it's in Aries though, first, the moon is in Aries, so we're a little bit, again, irrational, maybe a little bit angry, maybe a little bit more like supercharged with our emotions. And as it sextiles Mars in Aquarius, what I do like about that is, again, getting things done, being more ambitious. It's really good for like conflicts. Like I look at the moon in Aries sextiling Mars in Aquarius as like debating social issues with your friends is like very combative and very like juicy and just being like, well, this study says this and this is how this is and stuff like that. So I think there's a little bit more of a need for speed, but also like a need for violence, a need for blood with the moon sextiling Mars in Aquarius. But Mars being about, fights, conflicts, energy, drive, ambition. It's in Aquarius. There's kind of some motivation around there's some motivation with the people that you're surrounded by, with the people that you're communicating with, something that, I should have talked about maybe even last week, but since Mars and Venus have been in Aquarius, they've been in my third house. And I just think the third house is such a weird house to talk about. But the third house does rule communication, more so like text messages. Like I always think of the third house as much more of like hardware and the ninth house is much more of like software. But like this was I think 2 weeks ago, I was just chatting with everybody online. Like I was reconnecting with people. I was meeting new people, just like shooting messages back and forth, talking about all types of things. I've been very chatty Cathy, and I have Mars and Venus in Gemini. So Mars and Venus in Aquarius in my third, complements that. But I just found that really interesting with Mars just being kind of like, I'm more anxious or I'm more like, energized in this area. So the moon sextiling Mars, a little bit of more energy, a little bit more go juice, but then the moon ingresses into Taurus where it's exalted, where there's this comfortability, there's this familiarity. The moon going from Aries to Taurus reminds me of like, Friday, Saturday, you get a lot done, or maybe even like a Sunday morning, you clean the house, you make breakfast, everything's good to go. And then you can just relax. Like there's this kind of like comfort in all of my responsibilities are done and taken care of. Now I can just be comfortable. And so there is this kind of comforting feeling that happens later on Tuesday, but the moon will first square Pluto. And again, it just reminds me of like, because I'm a Gen Z and I like brain rot memes for the boomers in this that don't know, there's a very popular meme or just like a funny joke that is put in a lot of memes, but it was like this picture of like, oh, are you Democrat or Republican? And like it's like going back and forth and it just fades away, and then there's just a long list of text that's like, there are microplastics in my blood, there are microplastics in my blood, there are microplastics in my blood. That's my political view, is I don't really care which side. There are microplastics in my blood, and I'd like that to stop, please. So the moon in Taurus squaring Pluto is very like, it's there's some sort of pressure in terms of being comfortable and enjoying the fruits of your labor when, again, I just think the way to exaggerate it is like, again, you buy meat, charcuterie board for your friends at a picnic, but now you've bought up the amount of red meat that you're allowed to have for the month, and your CBDC is now locked until you go and buy your bug meal the next time you're at Whole Foods, kind of a thing. So with Pluto being in Aquarius, there's this kind of power, fear, corruption, control when it's related to groups. And I think that moon in Taurus just makes it a little bit hard to enjoy. Like, it's kind of like, how can I, for example, a lot of us, what I really find interesting about like people who are really into diets is one of the things I feel like, whether you're vegan or like carnivore, wherever you're at in between, is we all kind of agree, like there's so much poison in the food. Everything's tainted. Like we don't have clean drinking water. We don't have like, it's hard to trust like the meat because of all the stuff that they feed the cows. And then it's also hard to trust, all of the vegetables because again, they just spray it with poison. And so that moon in Taurus squaring Pluto is just kind of like, it's hard to enjoy like comfort things when there's some sort of tainted corruption to them. You know what I mean? Another way I almost look at it is like, I feel like recreational drug use wouldn't be so bad if there wasn't fentanyl laced in everything. You know what I mean? I was talking to my mom about this because my mom is, sober, and she has a women's meeting. It's not AA, but it's a 12-step program essentially. And she, all these boomers, they're talking about, they're like, we don't remember anyone dying from cocaine. Like, who died from cocaine? It's like, yeah, everything's got fentanyl in it. Like, you can't even do a little, coke to have some fun, because I've been using a lot of coke analogies lately. But you can't even do it to have fun because it's all, tainted. Like, and it's not even like you could overdose, like, don't do drugs, they're scary. It's like, if you really want to put on your tinfoil hat, China's sending out the fentanyl stuff to Mexico again to, kill, U.S. citizens and cause strife and division and stuff like that. So it's like literally a war. But anyway, the moon squares Pluto. So at first there's kind of like this taintedness. It almost reminds me of a lot in the drug community right now. It's like, I was telling my mom about this because she was like blown away when she heard this. If you like do drugs recreationally, like people usually carry Narcan on them or fentanyl test strips. Like if you are going to, I'd really recommend having Narcan on hand, having some test strips on hand. And so that moon in Taurus squaring Pluto is kind of like, okay, maybe you test the baggie and it's tainted. But then the moon sextiles Venus. Your friend has this pure fish scale shit from fucking Ecuador, and you have a good time. Like the moon squaring Pluto is, again, like double checking things. Like it's hard to enjoy things when there's some sort of level of corruption tainted with it. But then the moon immediately sextiles Venus. There's like, again, going back to the charcuterie board analogy, like, okay, don't worry about that. Just enjoy the moment. Enjoy your friends. The moon's exalted. It's in Taurus. Venus is exalted. Jupiter's in the Venus ruled sign. Venus is in the Jupiter ruled sign. There's so much to enjoy about Tuesday, even though it's kind of like a, for a lot of people after the lockdowns, there was a lot of like anxiety around being in big groups of people. I know I dealt with that in one way, which was like, I was just afraid of judgment. And there was a lot of people who were scared of being in groups of people because they didn't want to get fucking sick. And so I look at Tuesday as kind of that same feeling as like, okay, let's go back to normal. Let's enjoy something. There's a little bit of fear, but then your anxieties wash away because you're having a good time. So I really like this moon sextile Venus thing on Tuesday, like late Tuesday evening. So then we get to Wednesday. The moon, while it's in Taurus, is going to make a sextile to Saturn. It's going to conjoin Jupiter. Again, really love that. It's kind of like, make hay while the sun shines, extrapolate all the value that you can. The moon, as it's sextiling Saturn, in my opinion, is like, hey, there's a time and place to, be stressed and is worried, or there's a time and place to be angry and upset, and there's a time and a place to be chill and relaxed and to like have that self-control. And as the moon makes that sextile to Saturn, where it's like, all right, let's check in for a minute. How are we feeling? Like, can we handle this situation in a good way? After the moon sextiles Saturn, it's kind of like, all right, you can be comfortable, you can relax, like the world's not going to end. The moon will then conjoin Jupiter, where there's this hope, there's this abundance, there's this like, wow, things are going really good. Also on Wednesday, my new song's coming out. So if you haven't already, go ahead and follow me on Spotify, follow my Spike of Music YouTube channel. Check out the music video if you haven't already. As of this day, I'm recording, Captured, my first song is at 7,000 something streams. I really would like to get it to 10,000 before the next song comes out, and this next song's coming out on Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe to my, not subscribe, but follow my Spotify account. Follow me on my on my Instagram for Spike of Music. I'm really excited for the song. I'm sure Parker is ready for this song to be over because she did a ton of work on the music video. The music video is insane. So again, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel just for that. But the moon conjoining Jupiter is, again, like it reminds me of like a good sale. Like, have you ever been to like a grocery store and you were going to go buy, for example, like meat or like berries, and they're having like a gigantic sale on it. You're like, I'm going to get all types of stuff. Like, reminds me of like Costco, like, again, getting a really good value out of like getting a bulk order of something. So there's something very pleasurable about Wednesday, about like getting more than what you asked for and feeling very content with it. Then we get to Thursday, and Thursday's got a lot of lunar transits going on. So let's just go over them. The moon's going to conjoin Uranus. Then it's going to square Mars. Then it's going to sextile Neptune. Then it's going to ingress into Gemini and trine Pluto. So there's a lot going on here. And as the moon's as the moon's conjoining Uranus in Taurus, this is good for, again, being innovative, being creative, being willing to try something new, and being willing to get out of your comfort zone. Like Uranus and Taurus, if Uranus is disruption and innovation, and it's in this like very grounded sign, like I feel like, I don't think Uranus is in like detriment in Taurus. I just think like if there's one sign that doesn't want to get shook up, it's Taurus. And so the moon conjoining Uranus and Taurus can be like, I just want things to be grounded and chill. It's like, you know, if you're a parent, like there's probably like, I only know this just from, you know, movies and TV shows and talking to parents, but it's like you get like 5 seconds to just sit on the couch, everything's done, you breathe, you relax, and then a kid breaks. You just hear like glass shattering in the background. Like that's the moon in Taurus conjoining Uranus. It's like right when you want to get comfortable, boom, something kind of happens. And so the way I look at that is, you know, go with the flow, enjoy that 5-second deep sigh of relief, and then get back up, get going. The other way I'd look at this is expect disruption, expect things to kind of, you know, happen unexpectedly. But again, don't be afraid to go with the flow with it. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to be innovative. I think that's what's really important about the moon in Taurus. Like, for example, like I really like now going barefoot as much as I can. I live in the city, so I don't go barefoot out here. But like if I go play Frisbee golf, which I haven't done in a long time, but I really want to go to do, like I try to go barefoot as much as I can, even though there's wood chips on the ground and they fucking hurt. I'm trying to like build up resistance to that or tolerance to that. So then the moon will then make a square to Mars. And like I said before, we get a lot of these Aquarius Taurus squares like we had last week. As the moon's in Taurus and it's squaring Mars, it just reminds me of, here's a really good example, and this is going to be roasting myself, okay? The moon in Taurus squaring Mars in Aquarius is very like, you and your friends are enjoying a nice meal and things are going well, and then someone just like brings up politics with like a group of people that also just, they don't see eye to eye on things, and it just disrupts the good time. This is a self burn. I do that. I'm super guilty. But that's what it reminds me of, because Mars in this, if you look at the chart here, Mars is in the superior position and the moon in Taurus is squaring it. So the moon in Taurus is like, I want to feel comfortable. I want to feel chill. I want to feel, you know, nourished. And it squares Mars in Aquarius, where, for example, another way to look at it is you are at a picnic at the, in the park with your friends. And then, you know, because this is America and we all have the same experiences in America, you have some people that are less than cool start playing the worst music, like something like Kid Rock or something, blasting it, throwing beers and yelling and stuff like that. Like there's some sort of disturbance with this that isn't all that fun or enjoyable. But the moon then makes a sextile to Neptune after that, and I think that is also good for creativity. Again, I also think it's good for finding solutions. Like if you've ever been to like the beach and there's a group of people that are next to you that at first like they bug you or piss you off, and then, you know, they're like, hey, do you want a beer or do you want to throw the Frisbee with me? And you're like, sure, this is actually fun. Like, I think there's some sort of resolution to it there, as long as you kind of be creative with how things look. And I think that also extends into the moon ingressing into Gemini on Thursday. Because the moon goes into Gemini and trines Pluto. It's like, okay, again, that person next to you at the beach, you know, they sit next to you, you're kind of annoyed. Like, I grew up watching Seinfeld, and I always think of Seinfeld where it's just like, oh, you know, do you have to sit right there? There's all this room and you have to sit right here. The moon goes into Gemini and trines Pluto, where it's, again, they offer you a beer, they offer you a snack, they offer you to play volleyball with them, and you do. And lo and behold, they're actually super fucking sick. And, you know, you get to talk to them, and maybe they're into a similar thing that you're doing, or you're really curious about what they're into. They're curious about you. That's what I think the moon in Gemini trining Pluto is. It's like you make these really powerful connections through communication with other people. So I really like Thursday, even though it's kind of all over the place. Then we get to Friday, and then the moon, while it's in Gemini, is going to make a square to Venus, and then it's going to sextile Mercury, and then it's going to square Saturn. So the moon in Gemini squaring Venus in Pisces is very much like your yapping is ruining the experience. Like the moon in Gemini squaring Venus in Pisces is like, you know, there's so many things I can. It's like you're at a rave, you're enjoying it, everything's really nice, and then, you know, someone yells out something like that's distasteful that like ruins the vibe. And there's a time and a place for that. Like I can't get over one time me and my family went and saw True Grit, the new one with what's his face, the dude, I can't remember his name. If you've ever watched True Grit, next time you watch it, I want you to pay attention with how fucking silent that movie is for like the first 5 minutes. There is no noise. And so we're in the movie theater, and I'm like, I don't know, 12 or 13 at this time, and me and my stepbrother are doing everything to not laugh out loud because it's just too quiet, and we're little boys, so that shit is funny to us. It's still funny to me now as an adult. And I mean, it's like 5 minutes in of being just dead silent, and someone just yells out, "Man, it's quiet in here." And the whole movie theater laughed. Everyone clapped. He did this thing. I'm just kidding. Everyone did laugh though. It was really funny. But this would be like, you go to do that and everyone's like, "Shut the fuck up." Like, that, you fucking killed it. Like, don't disrupt things by talking or chatting. Or it's like, for example, if you're in a movie theater and you've got your fucking phone out. I can't believe it's 2024 and people still have their phone on full brightness. Or like, oh my God, going back to the kids with the iPads. Parents, if you're going to put an iPad in front of your kid, fine. Turn the fucking volume down. I can't tell you how many times I've been to a restaurant lately with a kid with an iPad, and that volume is fully up, and it's like they're playing games, and it's click, 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 bing, 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 pew, 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 and I'm just like, oh my God. Oh my fucking God. Like, this is where I'm just like, bring back beating children at this point if it means I can have some fucking peace in a restaurant eating food and not have to hear someone's stupid fucking games. I know that's brutal, but like, if you're going to put an iPad in front of your kid, turn the fucking music down. And that's the moon in Gemini squaring Venus in Pisces. It's like there's some sort of auditory disruption that is, again, disturbing the peace, killing the vibe. That's how I would look at that. But then the moon sextiles Mercury in Aries, where, a scenario that I feel like is very rare these days. But the moon squares Venus, right? Like, there's some sort of disturbance. And the moon in Gemini sextiling Mercury in Aries reminds me of just like some guy in there just being like, "Hey, can you shut your kid up?" And then, like, again, everyone claps because someone confronted the bad parents and the kid. And everyone's like, "Yeah, like, tell that kid to shut up. Like, finally someone spoke up for us." And then the moon squares Saturn, where the parents like, "No, you fuck off. Like, my kid will do whatever they want." Like, that's very Saturday. Is very like, oh, my bad, not Saturday. We're talking about Friday. Is there's some sort of a disturbance. It's really annoying. It kills the vibe. Someone speaks out against it, and then they just get a hard rejection. That's almost how I would look at it. I think that's a very funny way of looking at it. Then we get to Saturday. The moon's in Gemini. It's trining Mars in Aquarius, where, like, the movie ends. You walk outside and everyone's talking about, "Wasn't that guy so annoying?" You're like, yeah. Like, the moon in Gemini trining Mars in Aquarius is very like a group of people disgruntled, like, all find connections because of the one thing that pissed them off, even though they're like complete strangers in other areas. That's how I look at the moon's trining Mars. This is a funny analogy, and I wonder if I'm in a circumstance or a situation where I get to experience this, because I really hope I do. But the moon trining Mars is, again, communicating, talking to people. It's trining Mars. Again, I look at that as like communicating with people that are disgruntled, that are angry about something that you're all in a shared agreement with. That might be politics. That might be literally, again, loud kid with an iPad at a restaurant, and you guys are all in agreement of like, "That was really fucking annoying. I can't believe those parents didn't turn that down," type of a thing. But then the moon makes a square to Neptune, where, I don't know, maybe someone goes like, "I don't know, maybe, the kid's like autistic and like he needs the sounds so he's not like deprived of sensories." And you're like, "Oh, maybe I didn't think of it that way. Like, maybe I'll stop being such an asshole." So the moon in Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces is very like, reminds me of the game of telephone. If you ever played telephone, the sentence starts off one way, and then by the time it gets to the end of the room, the sentence is something completely different. So that's how I look at the moon in Gemini squaring Neptune in Pisces, where it's like you might be communicated something, and there might be some truth to it, but that may not be the whole truth, because, again, the line of communication that it went through, it gets distorted as time goes on. So if you are receiving some sort of a message or a communication on Saturday, just know there might be more to that story, and it'd be probably wise of you to investigate it a little bit further. And then we get to Sunday, and on Sunday, we have the next highlight of the week. We only have 2 highlights this week, and that's going to be the sun conjoining Neptune. And then we also have the moon ingressing into Cancer, trining Venus and Saturn. Sunday is very wet. Sunday is very watery. I do like that. There are times to replenish ourselves and feel hydrated and get wet and emotional. But I think with the sun conjoining Neptune just reminds me of putting a gigantic, powerful flashlight in murky water. All that does is make things more murky and make things even less clear. Or turning on I use this analogy literally every year, but it's like just turning on your high beams in the fog. Like, it actually makes it harder to see. So there's a part of Sunday where you're wanting to bring more illumination into what you don't understand and what you don't see. But as you, like, you don't know what you don't know. And as you learn more, like, the more you know, the less you know, is essentially what the sun conjoining Neptune is. I think the other part of it too is like there's a whole other side of it that is very creative, very expressive, again, very like magic. And when I say magic, I mean like the sleight of hand card stuff like I talked about last week. But there's another level of it that's very like again, I think it's good to not be clear about things. Like if you're wanting that clarity and that certainty on Sunday, I don't think you're going to get it. But I think what Sunday is good for is relishing and enjoying the unknown. Like, hey, I don't know how this art piece that I'm painting is going to go. I'm just going to vibe. I'm just going to put the brush strokes where I feel like putting the brush strokes. I'm going to let that creative, intuition come down from me, and I'm just going to channel that higher power and just do the thing. That's what I think Sunday's good for. And as the moon ingresses into Cancer, the moon is now, again, emotions, our body, how we're feeling. It's now in its home sign. This is like, again, like taking a good shower. It's like, if you ever have those days where it's like, you shave, you trim your beard, you take your shower, you trim your nails, like you do all of the maintenance stuff, like to really take care of yourself. You're doing laundry. That's very the moon ingressing into Cancer. But it's also going to be trining Venus first and then trining Saturn. Where another way I look at this is you are doing the things that you need to take care of. It's feeling good and you're having fun doing it. While you're at it, while you're having the fun, it's like, for example, maybe you bought a new piece of art or you bought some more furniture for a house. You set that up and then you go, well, I'm motivated. Let me check a couple things off this list that I've been meaning to get to for a long time. That's like work on the house. Like I've been meaning to trim up these bushes in the backyard, or I've been meaning to do X, Y, and Z. That's how I look at Sunday, is like, Sunday's just about vibing, in my opinion. And there's something that you need to take care of that's like, that you are going to, that you'll find a lot of pleasure in. And then there's something else too that's like a burden that you've maybe been putting off for a little while, that you're like, all right, I'm just going to take care of this now since I'm already in the vibe and I'm in the mood anyway. That's this week, guys. But next week, let's talk about it real quick. Mercury conjoins the North Node. Mercury ingresses into Shadow. The Sun ingresses into Aries. We have Venus conjoining Saturn. We have Mars ingressing into Pisces. We have Venus sextiling Jupiter. That's really the highlight of it. And we have the lunar eclipse in Libra. We start eclipse season at the very end of next week, but there's so much going on next week. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video and let me know that you support it. Comment below. Let me know what you're excited for this week and what your plans are. And with that being said, I'll be seeing you guys next week.